Hello, Legal Shield family. This is your servant CEO, Jeff Bell, and I'd like to spend 5 minutes strong. Recently, I had a chance to speak to some millennial leaders in Legal Shield and in business generally, and it kind of struck me that what would I like to share with them? And I came up with the idea of 10 things I wish an old person would have told me when I was a young person. So here are 10 things that I share with everyone, but especially those that are either young or young of heart. Number one, every experience is input for growth. Everything you encounter teaches you a lesson in life. The question is, do you have the self-awareness? Do you have the honesty and the courage to discover what the real lesson is? Are you brave enough to recognize the wisdom that you gained through the experience? Life can be tough, especially in coping with setbacks and failures. And oftentimes it took me a long time, sometimes even months or years, to actually get over sometimes the anger or the pain of failure. I was having trouble letting go of my ego, quite frankly. I had grief or self-pity. And yet, once I'd gone through, if you will, the Sarah principles, shock, anger, rejection, acceptance, and hope, Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, I finally then was able to reflect and see that the wisdom was not about what others had done to me or the failures of the circumstance, but rather, how could I grow as an individual and get better? Number two, happiness comes from within. Quote, people are just about as happy as they make their minds up to be, end quote. That's from President Abraham Lincoln. You see, no one oversees your happiness but you. No one has the responsibility to make you happy. It's a very common misperception to believe that things like outside of yourself, and that's going to what makes you happy. You know, if you ask an unhappy person, well, what would make you happy? A lot of times, what they say is they'd like more material things. They like this or that, things that are just beyond their grasp. But what they need to understand, and where the profound wisdom comes into play, is that true happiness comes from within. People think abundance can make them happy, but the truth of the matter is possessions and status are really meaningless. Shared experiences, quite frankly, are greater. Relationships are greater than things. Number three thing that I would tell a young person now as an old person, anger is self-destructive. Quote, hate destroys the hater, end quote. That's from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Anger is destructive in nature. It makes people forget all the qualities that characterize the human being. Anger turns people into the instinct-driven animals that are blinded by aggression. It is in that state of being that, too many decisions are made and later painfully regretted. Your anger and hatred will hurt you the most. Quite frankly, they'll literally destroy you inside. And it's really important in wisdom of life to understand that hate is not the answer. It's only through love and forgiveness. Which brings us to number four. Forgiveness will set you free, but revenge will not. Quote, the stupid neither forgive nor forget. The naive forgive and forget. The wise forgive, but do not forget. That's from Thomas Sauce, a great psychologist, psychiatrist, and philosopher. Forgiveness is the characteristic of the strong, not the weak. It really takes a lot of strength to forgive and to let go of the hurt. The alternative to forgiving is vengeance, but it will not help you reduce the pain. In the end, you realize that when you contemplate and seek revenge, there's no difference between you and the person that hurt you. Number five, regret is more painful than failure. Throughout our lives, we are mostly worried about things that won't happen. We are afraid of failure, when the regret about not having tried something is actually more painful than the failure itself. The question you must ask yourself is whether you prefer to laugh about all the awkward failures you've experienced or to regret all the missed opportunities you rejected out of fear of failure. To me, failure is an inevitable part and aspect of life. The attempt to avoid failure at all cost, but not trying, that is an irresistible mistake, but it is reversible. And it is, in that regard, I think the worst failure of all is not even trying. The most common regrets of the dying are, I wish I hadn't spent so much time working. I wish I had stayed in contact with my friends and my family. I wish I had spent more time with my children. I wish I hadn't tried to please everyone. I wish I'd had the courage to express what I was feeling. Those are the regrets of those that have been more focused on avoiding things rather than engaging in living life. So those are the first 5 of 10 things that I wish an older person would have shared with me when I was a younger person. And that's our 5 Minutes Strong. We'll pick up on the next 5 next week.